uh, we have stumbled into something beautiful, and I've been trying to get to this for weeks, but we got into it last week on this intersection of priority and integration. And as you hear this, I need you to think of every relationship in your life. That as you close your eyes and you think of every relationship in your life, relationships past and present, relationships that are present and those that have passed on, the relationships that were in your life, are in your life, and will be in your life tomorrow. This affects all of them. It really affects the richness and the thriving, because I think so much of our pain in life is related to relationships and to trying to combat this inherent loneliness and being human. People think loneliness is a product of having nobody around, and is in fact it is just a condition, part of the human condition, and loneliness really cannot be cured. It can only be navigated and managed, and you can be richly surrounded and loved and valued. Think of the number of times celebrities who or very famous people surrounded by people. Everybody loves them. They've got they're friends with them. They their entourage from when they were 10 or whatever else it is, and they say, "I'm the loneliest person in the world." And it's, what can fix my loneliness? Nothing can fix your loneliness. You say, well, a relationship with God fixes our loneliness. Not true. I mean, think of the Psalms. The psalm is pouring out, "I'm totally alone. What is going on? I'm just out here and it's all a big nothing." Loneliness is part of the human condition, and it's not going to be eliminated, but it can be navigated, and navigating that and mining out the treasure in relationships is kind of where we've been. So we started last week with this idea here, and just as a quick catch up, this axis of in relationships of priority and integration. Now, please don't tune me out, because I think people say, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to hear this kind of stuff." This is the heart of everything. This is the Black Hills, right? This is the heart of everything of what I'm trying to tell you about how relationships work. And when you think of priority, we're speaking of on this axis here. We're speaking of the combination of obliged or appropriate obligation. What do you owe to this relationship? And you say, well, that's my father, that's my mother, that's my brother. You're going to help them out. You're going to take their call. I mean, we all have, phones when we get our phones and they ring and we see the name on them. And most of the time they say spam. Sometimes, it's a bill collector. But sometimes the name flashes up, and there's an unspoken lifting or depletion that comes with us, that comes upon us when those names pop up, and certain names bring us, "Oh, hey, hey, how you doing? What's up, man?" And other names, you look at it and there's a hesitation before you, or you be around somebody and that name flashes up on the thing, and you show them, you say, "Who is it?" And they look and say, "Oh man, should I take it? Should I take it? Should I take it?" So priority, and there are relationships in our life that demand to answer the phone because there is that appropriate obligation. But appropriate obligation is combined with demonstrated loyalty and demonstrated fidelity. So you have, well, it's my dad. Okay, well, that has an appropriate obligation to it. But then there's another factor to it, which is what? Has my dad demonstrated, demonstrated fidelity, demonstrated loyalty? And those two things in combination produce what we call this idea of accrued equity, that there's equity in the relationships. And you need to pause right now. We're going to do a lot of these pausing exercises. Just think of in your life who has the greatest equity, right? The greatest demonstrated fidelity, loyalty to you, the firstness, placing you first, and in combination with an obligation, an appropriate obligation. Think of those things. And they work in hierarchies. There are hierarchies to the priorities in your life. And we're working towards marriage. We're working towards romantic relationships. We're working towards parent-child. But I just want you to think in generic terms. So we all have higher and lower priority relationships. I used to use this phrase, you can't sell 10 slices of an 8-slice pie. There's no way you can say yes to everyone. And you really cannot promise the same level of priority to all people. It's ridiculous. It's a false idea. Think of the chain link fence, or think of a bike chain. We may all be one in the body of Christ. We may all be one. We're one family. But there's no way we can have the same demonstrated fidelity to every link, the same demonstrated loyalty to every link, the same, appropriate obligation, everything. No way every link can have the same accrued equity. But as you evaluate your relationship equity, it not only determines the demands that can be placed upon you, but the demands that can be placed upon someone else. One of my favorite films, Jack Nicholson, Helen Hunt, As Good as It Gets, Greg Kinnear, this brilliant film. And I won't do spoilers for it, but Helen Hunt, it's Helen Hunt, right? Yes. Okay. Helen Hunt has a child that's ill, and Jack Nicholson's a wealthy author, and he helps out this child for his own very non-altruistic reasons. But he ends up helping it, and then somebody tasks Jack Nicholson with a job. He's got to drive somebody out of state to try to help him, and Jack Nicholson does not want to do this. So he says to Helen Hunt, she's a waitress, he says, I want you to come with me on this trip. And she says, I'm not coming with you on a trip. He says, well, I think you should. And she says, are you saying that somehow by accepting your help, that somehow obligates me to help you out? And I love Jack Nicholson's line. He says, is there any other way to see it? And it's like, of course, there's accrued equity in this. I came through clutch for you. I had a neighbor, Olivia's turning 20 today, if you can believe it, 20 today. My gosh. And so it occurred to Connie and I, Olivia had never had a surprise party for any of her birthdays. And so what we were thinking, and we had done, was it for Mikey's 13th? Is that what we did, a surprise party? So we had done one for Mikey at 13 and had... I don't know what even told him we were doing, but we had all his buddies together. It was during COVID, I think, so we had all his buddies together, and we had to do something outdoors, so we went tubing down the Chattahoochee, which, depending on the poo level, is or is not, a very Olympicene idea. So we surprised him, and he pulled up, and all his buddies were at the lake park, and he was sitting there looking around. And he goes, "Why?" Because I had told him I was lost. Oh man, I made a wrong turn, so I pulled into the thing, and I said, "I'll just turn around here." And he kind of looked, and he's like, "No way! Look at all these people out here doing something the same day. Wow, how did all my friends get together?" What happened? Yeah, he thought they were Boy Scouts. He said, "Oh man, it must be a Boy Scout thing." And then he looked, he's like, "These are my friends," and so freaked out. And so I said, "This is your party," but Olivia had never had that happen, and so. I thought, and all good surprises deserve lies and subterfuge and masquerade, as the French. So I had to elicit some help. And so I was talking to some neighbors, and I said, "Hey, can you invite Olivia over maybe to babysit her? Can you do this? And can you do this?" And several neighbors had things going on, but all of them, all of my neighbors, like, "Oh my gosh, whatever I can do to help, whatever I can do to help. Olivia's such a phenomenal. You're the, and you're the best neighbors we've ever had. Oh my gosh, blah blah blah," which is very kind to say. And I remember talking to this one gentleman. And I said, "Listen, I owe you a favor. I'm grateful for your help." And he's like, "Man, I'll tell anything. I can do anything. I make up anything." I said, "I owe you a favor." He said, "Oh, you don't owe me anything." He said, "What you've done for me, what your family's done, and we haven't really done anything for them. What you guys have done, you're just being our neighbors and blah blah blah." And so there is an appropriate obligation. It's a neighbor, right? Remember the parable? You should help out a neighbor, right? I did a series a long time ago on neighbors, brothers, friends, strangers. All the different things in the Bible, these different categories. So there is an obligation to help out a neighbor that's built in. But then there's an equity that's accrued. And I don't know what the equity is, but the way we carry ourselves, there's an equity. So here, what is this? Priority coming out of accrued equity, coming out of some, to me, unidentified, yet unidentified, demonstrated loyalty or fidelity to the neighbor. And then, of course, that obligatory, appropriate obligation. And what's wild is now they have demonstrated to me. Right? They've now demonstrated to me. What are they? They've made a deposit into the relationship equity in all relationships. I'm talking about a neighbor, and I'm talking about a surprise party, but I'm talking about marriage. I'm talking about parents and children. Well, I'm your mother. I'm your daughter. Whatever. Well, that certainly is appropriate obligation. But the appropriate obligation does not fully flesh out the equity. And a lot of times we just run on, I'm your child or I'm your parent. And listen, I'm your child, I'm your parent, carry a lot of weight. I'm your neighbor carries a lot of weight. As a matter of fact, as I'm sitting here thinking, my kids are here, as I go through my stock of my neighbors around the way, Um, there are almost every neighbor I have. Well, I would say, well, there's demonstrated fidelity and accrued equity here. There's another neighbor that's made quite a debit in the account, a very little deposit. But you know what? I would bless them. Why? Because you can always see this is the power of Christ. This is the power of what we talked about in our first series of seeing and considering, beholding until they become beloved. That what you say? There's not a lot of equity here. You have debited out of the account, but remember, when we see as God, we're not only walking as the Creator. We're working as the Creator. So even though they've debited out of the neighbor account like pretty gnarly debits, like overdraft, overdrawn account, almost shut down, but because I choose to walk and to work as the Creator, we say, okay, well, we're gonna still place that priority. But now on the integration side. On the integration side down here, integration is made up of two things. There is the functional aspect of integration, and then there is the is it ideological? Ideological, is that right? That's close enough. The ideological. And the functional is, about cooperation, right? But the ideological is about compatibility. Compatibility. And what the idea, this is how well we operate, right? The functional is how well we operate, and the ideological is how common is our sight. And here's a big part of this on the ideological side. It's worldview. And what do I mean by worldview? This is big. When we speak of somebody's ideological compatibility, when we speak of how common sight, we're talking about two things. We're talking about A, our approach to life, and B, our response to life. When we speak of worldview, we're saying how you approach life and how you respond. How you approach relationships, how you approach money, how you respond, right? How you approach in your marriage, how you approach sex, and how you respond. How you approach parenting, how you respond. How you approach a workflow or business management or leadership style, or how you approach work at all. Work is just something I do to clock in and clock out until I'm out of there. Or no, work is something I do because it's a way I demonstrate and bring glory to God in the witness of God's goodness, of how I demonstrate in my work ethic, our approach and response to life. And so the functional and ideological, these two in the integration side. And what we're working on now is trying to figure out how, maybe I can get another color here. Let me see if this might help. I know my thing is getting kind of weird here. But how we can move and understand and conduct ourselves properly in the priority hierarchy, and how we can move and understand and conduct ourselves properly in the integration hierarchy. Because if you want to screen capture this, you might want to go ahead and screen capture it. I'll just go to another page here. Because as we look at these two things, you've got your priority on this side and your integration on this side. As we move up in priority integration, our thriving, the sweet spot is here. The relationships that we have that are the highest priority in concert with the highest integration, they bring us the greatest joy. And so if you're finding that there's not joy in a parenting relationship, if you're finding there's not joy in an adult child or a teen child relationship, if you're finding there's not thriving in a sibling relationship, if you're finding there's not striving in a working relationship, I have no delusions that all relationships will reach a hierarchy of priority, that there will be accrued equity here, because sometimes, here's what's so powerful about it, sometimes we can function, let me see if I can find a thing here, sometimes we can function very well with people, But those people are very low on the priority scale. They're way down here on the priority scale. So much so that we worked together for 7 years, and when the work was over, we didn't have anything to do with each other. Why? Because we functioned well. We might even function and share an ideological, an approach. Ideological. Huh? IDEO. Okay, that's IDEO. We might have, and somebody say, wow, I can't believe you worked on this campaign. I can't believe you worked in this department. I can't believe you worked in this community thing. I can't believe, we did so well. We functioned so well. What happened? Well, it just, the project shut down and we moved on. But you guys were so close. Well, we were functionally close. We were ideologically close, but there was no ascension in the hierarchy of that relationship priority. Okay, I've gone over that. Let's move on here, and I hope you'll get something out of it. So let's today let's get into this. Though harmonizing, catch this now, and I hope you're getting something out of it. Sometimes I feel like I'm literally just talking to a camera, but I know you're there and I feel you there. Okay. Though this idea of harmonizing, right? Harmonizing and escalating intersections. You got the priority coming along with the integration, right? These escalating intersections of priority and integration within individual relationships, that's useful for thriving. Here's a big truth. In reality, and in not only in reality, when I say kind of a observed, but also an experiential reality, the rich life, which is what I'm trying to get us to, the full life, which is what I'm trying to get us to, the bonded and tethered life, which is what I'm trying to get us to. What do you mean bonded and tethered? We talked about seeing and being seen tethers us to this earthly experience. It tethers us in the cosmos. I would say that in my priority relationships and my integrative relationships, Connie is obviously the highest, right? 100% integration is not possible, but we are striving for functional and ideological integration. Certain things are just the way we are, and I don't mean that as a defense. Well, that's just the way I am. I'm just an opinionated idiot. Well, that's gonna affect your integration. As a matter of fact, we can talk about it this way. Let's see if I can get some greens in here. We could talk about it this way. There are some times where people make kind of ideological and functional efforts with a high priority relationship. And those efforts just, they almost time out. And you can find in a marriage, you say, I spent 15 years trying to go up that thing. And so what? Even though on my priority side, my husband is without a doubt my highest priority relationship. And some people say, not my husband. Some people say, it's my mother, my mother. Some people say, well, in reality, my husband is down here, my mother is up here, and my children are up here. Which is interesting because sometimes as children spawn and move on and they grow and they no longer require the high levels of functional operation, what people do is they start working back down the ladder and say, you know what, let me start to evaluate the other priority relationships in my life. One of the major things that I've seen, I hope you hear, maybe it's a secret and maybe it's not, one of the major things I've seen in relationships, let me back this up here, is that as people strive for, I'm trying to get us integrated. I'm trying with my spouse to get us functionally integrated. I'm trying with my spouse to get us ideologically integrated. But I'm getting weary because, he's stuck where he is and she's stuck where she is or whatever. One of the things that I've seen this happen more than once. It's more than a notion. You better hear this preacher today. One of the things that I've seen happen more than once is people have had a spouse, a woman, I have a spouse as my priority, high priority, of course. I have a parent as a high priority, and I have my children, our children as a high priority. One of the things that I've seen more times than you can ever imagine is a parent passes away, and they're no longer in that equation. And immediately when that parent is out of the equation, people start to reevaluate the priority relationship with their spouse. Children move on. and children get out of the nest. And what happens? Wow, let me come back and really evaluate the thriving level of relationship I have with my spouse. So Connie and I would say, we don't want to be in that position. We don't want to be in that position. They used to say, the experts used to say, and who knows what the experts are, that marriages, the most common years for divorce, and this is just one of those statistics that you read. 98% of the statistics you read are made up on the spot. They used to say that the highest years of divorce were year 2 and year 26. And we say, why year 2? Because I think you go in, you make an effort at ideological and functional integration. You find out that effort does not work, or it doesn't work according to your false expectation, and people bail. The reason year 26 was that people got together. They got through the first couple of years. They built their entire lives around building a family, building a career, building wealth, building a household, raising children. And once those children into their next season, they find they have very little functional or ideological, or they've achieved functional cooperation with their spouse, but have a void in the ideological. And now they start going, what am I even doing here? Why? Because our bond was over the common, we were like working together. Our bond was over raising the kids. We were not meshing. Why? Because bringing full integration, full ideological and functional integration, it takes effort. It takes work. It takes it's labor, and I will tell you this: the higher you go up the functional ladder, the thinner the air is, and the greater the demand for ideological compatibility. You say, well, Connie and I are married, and that's great, and we run a household, and that's great, and that requires a certain level of functional and ideological integration. Connie and I do everything together. We pastor together. We run businesses together. We do ministry together. We do, we write our television scripts and work on those together. We're doing this one-man show. We do that together. The higher you go up, you say, well, most couples don't do that. Most couples, they're together. They wake up. One gets out of bed before the other one. They pass each other with toast and coffee at 7 o'clock. One goes off with this direction. One goes off that direction. 7:30, they come back. Somebody's catching the game. Somebody's doing something here. And then they pass each other, and they got vacations, and they say they're not very functionally integrated. That's how most couples and most families operate. Connie and I don't operate that way. Our function is in every sphere together. Well, the higher you go up that ladder, the thinner the air, the greater the demand for that ideological work. And that's that ideological work. Or sometimes in function, you say, you know what? I'm not reaching integration with you functioning. I'm just going to work around you. And that happens almost everywhere. That happens with spouses. That happens with parents and children. That happens with parents with little children, parents with teenagers. At some point, you fight, you rail, you flail, you yell, you scream, and you're like, you know what? I just got it. Why? I can't achieve functional integration with you, so I'm just going to go around it. Why? Because my thriving depends on, maybe I'm never going to win this. Maybe we're never going to see this or approach or respond to this the same way. So let me take a step back from my own piece, and let me learn to work around you. And what happens is you have relationships that will maintain on the axis. They will maintain a high level of priority, but you'll find that because the function is scattered and broken, you'll find that even though somebody say, well, of course you're my very first relationship, or of course you're a high priority relationship. Yes, but does that relationship bring you joy? Not really. Why? Because even though they're a priority, even though there's the appropriate obligation, even though there's the demonstrated loyalty, you don't just have to have priority to have thriving. You've got to have that priority in concert with that integration. So if you want joy, if you want thriving, if you want to feel like it's a lifting relationship instead of a leaning, right? If you want to feel like John Maxwell, it's an elevator that takes you up instead of an elevator that takes you down. If you want to see their face on the phone and feel like, whoa, this is exciting versus, oh gosh, and you have to mentally prepare yourself, then you're going to have to move beyond, it's my mom, it's my child, it's my daughter. And I don't think we understand that sometimes children are wonderful, but they're not perfect. Parents are not perfect, and children are not perfect. And Connie and I have decided we're going to outsmart our children because we want to keep reinventing ourselves to qualify to be in their lives. We want to be in their lives. We want to be part of their lives. We do everything together. We hang out together. We have high levels of integrative function. Connie and I are willing to adjust ourselves ideologically because the older your children get, the smaller space you take up when your children are little, right? And this is the crazy thing. When your children are small, on the functional side, this is funny. On the functional side, the children, we're just going to make this the little children go, the children take up about that much of the function, and the adults get a little bitty tiny. Why? Because children suck the life out of everything. And I'm just going to be honest. I mean, they take every moment, everything. It's like, it's nonstop. And you combine that with a special needs child. You combine that with a child that has needs extra care. I mean, the energy, the function, huh? Oh, thank you. Well, there it is. Thank you. My gosh, I'm having a good time here. So this is what the children take up, right? And the adults have about that much space. But if you have a special needs child or some other circumstance, children can take up this and leave you very little, right? Space. That's on the functional. But guess what? On the ideological, it's reversed. On the ideological side. Right, of integration, it starts out, is that right, ideological? I don't know why this is so hard for me. Ideological side, is that right, ideological? Man, it just seems strange to me. Anyway, on the ideological side, I'm not even on the right thing. On the ideological side, children start out with very little of the ideological space. They fill up very little. And guess what? The parents get to dominate the approach and response. But as children age from 0, right? As they age from 0 into 12 and into 17 and into 25 and on into 40, guess what? That thing starts to reverse, which is that the children begin to demand, right? The children begin to expand their ideological footprint, and it encroaches on the parents. And what the parents sometimes want to do is push back, and we end up in this kind of push and pull strife here. But I'm telling you what, the smart parent says, you know what, I'm going to keep reinventing myself, which is I'm going to learn how to adjust. I'm going to learn how to, no. I'm going to learn how to adjust I'm going to learn how to outsmart you. So you only want this much of my life, but guess what? I'm going to come in and try to find all the ways that I can integrate with you, because you don't see me necessarily as the same blessing that I see you as, because what I really want is to have as much part of you, because you're my child always. And even though you feel I've debited the account, I'm not going to tell you how much you've debited the account, because you're a perfect angel and you've never done anything wrong. But I am going to outsmart you and find out any place you will have. And this is not to control you. This is not to take over you. This is just to say, I'm going to continue to adjust my response. I'm going to continue to adjust my approach, because what I don't want to do is move to this impasse where we have a ideological impasse that is blocked, that we can't move past. And now guess what happens? Because the ideological is not able to integrate, our function is not able to integrate, our operation is not able to integrate. So what do we get? We get back to this. We get back to my children are a very high priority. My parents are a very high priority, but there is absolutely no joy in the relationship. So I hope you're catching what I'm saying. All right. So so this idea of this richness in this bond, I've got a few minutes here. This tethered life that we want with our siblings, with our parents, with our spouses, with our neighbors, with our friends, with our coworkers, with our co-business owners, with our collaborators, whatever. The high level of richness is rarely, if ever, all fulfilled in one person. This is what I've been trying to get to. There's something to be said of piecemealing a thriving life through multiple relationships. There's something to be said of getting functional richness and ideological richness and the richness of priority, not always in one person. For Connie and I, we have that one person, but Connie is not my total fulfillment. There are things that our children give her that I cannot. There are things she gives our children that she doesn't give to me. There are things that she has in friendship, and Connie and I love, we're best friends. We're besties. We do everything together. You know this. But I can tell when she comes back from a lunch with one of her friends, I can see it on her face. She's getting something out of that she doesn't get out of what I have, because we have dynamics. We have history. We are striving and pushing for that integration. We're pushing. Now, on priority, she's not going to choose her bestie over me. That's not going to happen. I think I am the highest priority. And I would say I'm the highest priority, right up there with the kids, and I'm not really sure. I will say that depending on how healthy your marriage is, your spouse is either number one or your children. Your spouse is either number one or your children. And I think people genuinely know where they stand on that. But for Connie and I believe our spouse, that if it was ever a thing between having to pick between Connie and Kenobi, I really suspect that Connie would win that 3 out of 5 times. But piecemealing this life together, it takes a revelation to see how our life fullness is sometimes parceled out among many connections. Oh, gosh. We have to have a revelation. God, help me see. This is your assignment today. I said, God, help me see that really I do have fullness. And some people says, it's this idea of best friends. They're my best friend. Well, when you're little, I got 5 best friends. I'm telling you, I'm adult. And I will tell you, adults, in your whole lifetime, adults know you may get just a handful of best friends. Those friendships can run hot, can run cold. The priority can go up and down. The function and integration and ideological integration can go up and down. But really, in your whole life, how many best friends do you have? But there's another way to take a step back and say, wow, when I look at my life and relationship spectrum, I see, I have tremendous functional richness. I have tremendous priority richness. I have people who have equity with me that would drop anything for me, and I would drop anything for them, but our lives are not really integrated, where our lives are not cooperative, but man, ideologically, we are compatible. Or I have people who are really ideological compatible, and when I talk to them, they talk to me. It's like they see the thing, and they get the thing, and they speak to my richness. But where are they in a priority? What's the guy that I work with, or a lady that I work with, or a friend that I have? And so it's like your best friend. It's not even really a best friend. It's just someone that I love talking to, because I feel like when I talk to them, it's like we both see the world richer afterwards than we saw before. So you can have God giving you gifts piecemealed throughout this parceled out richness, and it requires conscientiousness to say, okay, God, show me that you've not left me. You've not. The scripture says, the Hebrew scripture says that God puts the solitary in families. Here I am in my loneliness, looking for maybe in my spouse, or maybe if you're single in a romantic relationship, or maybe if you're getting out of a romantic relationship in a friendship, or maybe you're looking for it in a friendship. God, show me where my friend is. Where's my best? Where's my number one priority thing? And you may find that the number one priority friendship is not the person you have the best function with. You may find the number one priority friendship is not the person you have the same ideological thing. You may find that the accrued equity goes to your A1 day one, your Ace Boone Coon from back in 62, 63 when God was a boy. That's who your top person is. But you find they're a little different functioning, so you just kind of compartmentalize. I love them, I'm with them, but we can only take so much of each other. Now, if the heat starts and nobody got sweethearts, who's going to be the first one to show up? They will. But do they really know you ideologically, who you really are? Can you really share your full self with them? No, I cannot. I can actually share my full self with somebody who is much farther down on the priority hierarchy, but my God, we have this richness here, but it doesn't at all debit from the equity that I have in this other priority relationship. Are you hearing me in this church today? So it says you talk so fast. That's kind of what I do. I think fast, I talk fast, and if we're going to get through this message, I need you to write fast. So pretty please with sugar on top. Take some notes. When you consider this richness, take stock of your life right now. We're going to do this in the next 5-7 minutes here. Take stock of your life, especially as it relates to felt presence and felt loss. We talked about that last week. Whose presence do you feel the most in your life? Sometimes it's not always the top priority, but whose loss would you feel the most in your life? See, they're not always on the same plane. And all this is made more complex when you consider that there's not really any such thing as a single life. But we live multiple lifetimes. Young people, hear this. To my young babies who are on here, 14, 15, 17, 19, 23. I don't mean to insult you. Call me a baby, whatever. Hear me. Let my 51 speak to your 21. Listen to this. There's no such thing as a lifetime. You have many lifetimes. It was in another lifetime, one of toil and blood. Blackness was a virtue. The world was full of mud. Coming from the wilderness, a creature void of form. Come in, she said, I'll give you shelter from the storm. There's not one lifetime. There's many lifetimes. Do you know how many lifetimes? Well, I just got to figure out. I mean, Olivia, bless her heart, she was 15. I'm going to graduate. I'm so freaked out. If I don't make the right decision, I said, stop. My dad, I turned 40 back in 2013. My dad, and I said, Dad, he said, well, 40 years old. I can't believe my son is 40 years old. I said, Dad, I got a wife of 2 kids. I got all these responsibilities. It's almost like I'm a full grown man. I guess I need to start growing up sometime soon. He said, nah, I'm almost 70. He said, I hadn't figured it out yet either. And I thought, that's so true. Pop's going to be 80 in February. Pop's going to be 80 in February. We're going on a world tour, I don't know, 5 white balls and a red ball. We might go on a world tour, or we might just go to a tour of Krog Street Market. I don't know, but we're going to do something for 80. It's going to be epic. It's going to be big. And Pop is in another lifetime. You got marriages, you got divorce, you got seasons, you got houses, you've been rich, you've been down. What did Frankie say? That's life, right? You're flying high in April and crash down in May. You're going to live many lifetimes. I was this, I got a degree in this, I was this, I used to be this. You want to talk about used to be? I'm getting ready to do a live stand-up storytelling show here in Atlanta. I got a theater, I'm just going to do it. And somebody said, are you actually going to get up? I am actually going to do this. It's going to be glorious. I'm scared out of my flipping mind. Can you ever believe this? This is a lifetime. Well, I'll tell you what, 35 years ago, that's where my life was going. And my life has gone all the way around the world, all these times. I'm in all these other places, done all these other things. I mean, I've been a consultant. I've talked to kings. I've talked to prime ministers. I've advised Fortune 50 companies. I've done all that kind of stuff. And now I'm going to get up and tell stories and jokes. And so, my God, what are you doing? I'm living not one lifetime, but many lifetimes. And so as you consider priority and integration, you're not only considering how one relationship can be high and low, but this one can be really rich and this one can be really stressful. Well, it's my mom, but it stresses me out. And this person's kind of like a just person that just got on my job, but our lunch together is so brilliant. I mean, you can have all of that in juxtaposition, all of that in conflict, in beautiful tension. Consider this priority, functional, and ideological confliction in Jesus' life, right? The mythical, the biblical, the historical, and the actual. Think of his relationships. Think of John the Baptist. John the Baptist, my God, we're kinfolk. That's my cousin, first cousin, second cousin. It was a complex time, but we have this, and JTB. They're simpatico. They're one. Nobody believed in him. John the Baptist was the only one that really saw him. Do you know what that must have meant to Jesus? As everybody else was confused about who he was, and John the Baptist says, "Behold the man." And then that ideological that they had together. Now all of a sudden, the very voice that said, "Behold the man," flip the page to another season. There I go on the road again. Turn the page. What's happening now? John the Baptist, the one that validated, is now questioning. Are you the man? What are we? We've gone priority. We've gone integration. We've gone ideological. We've gone function. They went out preaching together. One is baptizing the other. I mean, it's this beautiful thing. There's spirits. There's doves. Subway. Sleeping bags. I mean, all sorts of stuff is going on here. And then all of a sudden, what? The ideological shift. I was so sure, but are you sure you're sure? I mean, and then the grief, and it's this. So ideologically, John the Baptist and Jesus, they split at the end of their life, right? But when John the Baptist is murdered, it didn't matter that their functional and ideological plane had suffered in this different season. It was still priority. And Jesus grieves now deeply. Groans in spirit, tries to get away. Why? Well, you guys weren't even talking the same. He was actually speaking against you, questioning who you were. That might have been how it ended, but even though it ended that way on the functional and ideological, it didn't change who he was on the priority. Consider Mary and Martha, right? Friendship, deep friendship, platonic friendship. Was it romantic? Doesn't matter. Could it have been platonic? Yes. Could it have been romantic? It certainly could have. Jesus could have been a full man and like sex, just like all other human beings. He could have been attracted. He would still be more than wonderful, more wonderful than my mind can conceive. His friendship with Lazarus, his own family, his siblings, and his own family. His mother, right? Think of the complex relationship with his mother. That's his mama, highest priority. But even she sat back like, right, baby? What are you doing? And even Mary was in conflict. Mary looking and knowing what God had said, but also saying, why? What are you doing? And his mother, think of him on the cross, right? Think of his disciples. He's got this complex relationship with his dynamic, his ideological with Peter is off the charts. He appreciates James' zeals, but John's relationship is different. John and him have this brotherhood. They have this bonding, this friendship, so much so that when it was over, even though his mother and his family were like, get out of here, Jesus, what are you doing? You're causing conflict. Why are you causing all this strife? His mother in priority, his mother was still his highest priority, even though there was no ideological, but he doesn't look at Peter, his functional hero, and say, take care of my mom. He looks at John, his relational bonding hero, and says, please take care of my mother. So look, all of these things in overlapping, and we are that way too. And this can take on many faces, primarily through the respectful and fluid use of compartmentalization, which is to say what? Okay, you're a high priority, but we don't really function, or we don't really function in this area, or we function in this area, but not in this area, or we're ideologically aligned in this area, but not in this area. And how can I say, I want to keep the richness, and I protect that richness by sealing certain areas off and saying, let me absorb the good and bring the good and not be distracted by the bad. Because sometimes we think that if a person isn't everything, they are nothing, and that's not true. John the Baptist and Mary and Martha and Lazarus, his brothers, his mothers, his disciples, and Peter, James, and John, and they all had different things to him, and he kept all the richness. And even though he said, well, I reached the top of the ladder functionally with you, I can't go higher, or I've reached the top of the ladder ideologically with you, but you don't throw it out. You seal it off right there. Maybe there will be a rise in the ladder one day. Maybe we'll go higher in function and integration and ideological one day. I don't know, but I don't want to cut off the richness that I have because it doesn't have the same richness that this other relationship has. I hope, my God, you're hearing me today. I'm preaching better than you're typing. I don't even know if you're typing. Let's bring it on home. Imagine your parents, your families, your friendships, your work relationships that grow to a place of, I really like this relationship. It has a high priority to me, but you grow to this mutual, respectful place of, but we're not going to go there. I love that. What? There are just parts and areas and spheres that we just don't go. I go to my families, I hang out, but we just don't get into politics. Go to my families, go hang out, but we just don't bring up religion. I go to my families, I hang out, There's a certain thing. Why? Because for the sake of the whole, I'm willing to compartmentalize apart. The overall relationship, not only the overall relationship I have, but all the proximate others who could be affected. Well, I don't want to get involved in Jimmy and Timmy's divorce, so we don't bring up Jimmy and Timmy's divorce. I got a lot of opinions on Jimmy and Timmy's divorce, but we're going out, and for the sake of the whole and the proximate others, I'm just not going to say what I have. That's not a sign of I'm not being the true me. I'm the true me, and if you don't like me with all of my opinions, you just don't like me. Or you could also say there's a lot of richness here that I don't want to sabotage. There's nothing wrong with we're just sealing this part off for the sake of the whole. A good exercise you can do, I'm giving you these last exercises in these last couple of minutes, is this. Pause for a moment and take stock of your present relationships in light of these metrics, priority and thing. First, consider priority, practically, accrued equity. A good place to start, the favorites in your phone. Think of the favorites in your phone, and who do they represent to you? Do they represent a priority aspect, hierarchy, or an integrative hierarchy? Which of the favorites in your phone have changed over time? Which have not? Which cannot? In my favorites in my phone, Connie is there. Connie is functional, integrative, super hierarchy for me. She's my highest priority relationship. Under that is Olivia and Mikey. Olivia first by birth order, and Mikey and by phone order, and then Mikey after that. But beforehand it was Olivia, then my mom. But then the kids came along, and guess what? Here it comes now, moving up. Mom, mom gets placed. Here's the thing: mom was number one, right, for a long time. 28 years, mom was number one. Now all of a sudden, mom's moved to number two. That can be hard for moms. It's the way of the order. What did John the Baptist say? I'm not going to baptize you, man. You're the greatest. He says, you got to baptize me. Moms some now need to realize what they would want more than anything is for their sons, their daughters, to put their spouse as the priority. Sometimes moms have a struggle dealing with that. Sometimes children have a struggle dealing with that. I love you. I'm going to marry you, but you're not going to be before my mama. I get that. You work it out how you can work it out. You negotiate it on your own. What's interesting is my mom is number 4 on my phone and my dad's number 5. Just the way it is. It's just the way it is. But guess what? Mom's been gone 6 years, and guess who's still number 4 in my phone? Can't get rid of it. Can't do it. Can't. Now, others are still in my priority. Some because they're still in my top, my favorites or whatever they call. Some are there out of hope, like, you know what, this is not burning as hot, but maybe it will turn around. Some out of grief. Some people say, I've got a priority, and a guy wrote me this past week, a TCO member wrote me this past week and said, I realize I've been cursed with unyielding optimism. I so believe that things can turn around in my family, that the way my mom or my dad or my brother or whatever, or my sister is telling me I'm in a cult because I'm in TCO, and I have all of this idea, but I keep staying there because I have this eternal optimism. Maybe the phone is not even in your favorites, but still there's a decent measure of appropriate obligation. In my favorites, after my dad, my sisters are the next one in my line. Now, here's what's interesting. On the priority scale, my sisters are, they're not Connie, right? They're not the kids. They're not my dad, but they are the next in line. My sisters are sitting there, and they will always be there. Why? Well, you guys rarely talk. They live in different parts of the country. True, but when we talk, I love to talk. I love to hear their victories. I love to hear their setbacks, their felt presence and felt loss. I'll tell you, we guys don't even talk all the time. You guys maybe talk once a month. Okay, it's true. Maybe we talk once a month. You guys maybe text every couple of weeks. Yeah, that's true. But the felt presence and loss, it's a loss I would feel. It's a loss I would hope they would feel. So the integration, the function, we don't see each other a lot. It's like my day-to-day life goes on, their day-to-day life. Their moms, they're busy. They got a million trillion things going on. They're doing great. They're thriving. They're making money. They're building relationships. They're having kids. Their kids are going, blah, 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 blah. They're doing all that kind of stuff. But guess what? On the integration side, it's very low integration. But on the priority side, it is something that is unchanging. So you think about who is or isn't in your immediate call, invite, update, share list. So you may say, oh yeah, when I'm going out to dinner, they're not the first person I call. But my aunt or my cousin, they'll always be in my major priority list. This is the complex. Now consider not priority, but consider integration. And I mean, obviously in the large scale, there is no me, there is no you. We talked about it, the we, right? The interconnected. That we're actually one creation of God. Think of Romans 8, that it's not me and you, but we're all one creation. The trees, the birds, I'm looking out at the trees and skies and everything else. It helps expand the idea. Whew. You know what? I'm going to close right here because I'm rushing and I don't want to cheat you. It helps expand the idea when we talk about integration. To start with this, we have in our Christ tradition, which I no longer say Christianity. I read this past week the phrase Christ tradition. I think, are you a Christian? No, but I am. But my faith in God is rooted in the Christ tradition. I like that a lot. The idea of 1 Corinthians 12, the body of Christ, that we're all one body. And if the eye can't say to the hand, I don't need you, and the hand can't say to the foot, I don't need you, and if the little toe hurts, we all hurt. And if the back shoulders are getting a massage, then everybody's getting a massage. I like that idea, but I want you to change it. It's not just those who profess Christ like I do. It's all of creation. All of humanity we're one with. So if the Jews are hurting, or the Muslims are hurting, or the gay people are hurting, or the Republicans are hurting, or the Democrats are hurting, or if they're victorious, we feel the victory. We feel the sadness. Victory is a strange word because you think of war or politics, but I will tell you this, we feel, maybe a better word is the suffering and the rejoicing. We feel the joy and the sorrow. We're not allowed to, here at TCO, here at TCO, to say, well, people who believe in God like I do, or people who confess Christ, or people who are of the Christ tradition, then those are the body of Christ. Not true. What we're actually talking about is that 1 Corinthians 12 is a weaponized revelation of the oneness of humanity, but we're not going to weaponize it. We're going to recognize that when humanity, that's why we can never achieve full joy individually, because we're going to say, oh my gosh, my life is so good, but we're connected to those who are suffering. And at the same time, oh my gosh, we're suffering, but we're also connected to those who are rejoicing. That seems to be a more aligned Christ idea. So, with whom are you most intertwined? Functionally, operationally, cooperation. Are they at the top or bottom of your call list? Secondly, consider, as we close, who are you most compatible with ideologically and worldview? Are they at the top or the bottom of your call list? Now, that's interesting because you could have somebody at the total top of the call list that ideologically and worldview you're not really there. You could have somebody at the bottom of your call list, maybe not in your favorites, that is totally simpatico. And I want you to learn to examine relationships and go, wow, I've got a priority accrued equity richness here, but I've got a function richness here, and I've got an ideological richness here. What I want you to see is that you do have richness, but they might not all be concentrated in one person. Everyone's answers are going to be different, and that's okay. Can we just say, blessed are those whose highest priority relationships are also the ones with the greatest integration? We can say that. Blessed are you. If you think of your priority and you think of your integration, you go, oh, my priority and my integration, they're the same person or same people. Blessed are you. But I can also say this. Can we also say complicated is the nature of human relationships? Complicated is the nature of priority and integration as it relates to hierarchy. We can also say that. So I can say, blessed are you if you consider the priority relationships in your life and the functional ideological relationships in your life, and you go, oh my gosh, I find that those are the same. Blessed are you. Can I also say, blessed are they who go, wow, it's more complicated than I thought. Because I do have priority richness and I do have integrative richness. It's not that I don't have it. It's just that it's not in the same place. Guess what? Blessed are you as well, because it is complicated. Amen. All right, I think we'll stop there. I hope you got something out of this. Somebody said, my God, you talk so fast. Yes, because I'm excited, because I've been counseling people, Christians and people and secular people for 3 decades. I realized this is the root of all of it. And people feel it's an all or nothing, or it's a zero sum. You either is you is or is you ain't, and that's not true. Is you is and is you is really the truth. Amen. Thank you for your support. Everybody here, if you're getting something out of it, you support, and say, oh my gosh, this means so much to me. Show us the financial support, and we thank you for it kindly. If you find value, show value. If you say, I don't get anything out of it, no problem. Why are we sending you the links for things that you get nothing out of? If you're getting a little, give a little. If you're getting a lot, give a lot. If this is changing who you are in the world, if it's changing who you are in the home, if it's changing who you are in your neighborhood, on your job, if it's affecting you at your core, and you say, my God, my world is different. I approach and respond to the world different because of the truth that is coming forth from this church. Connie and I thank you for your decision to create value there by saying, hey, I'm not just showing up, taken, and being transformed. I got you. We thank you for that. And also, we thank you for not letting it stop here, not letting it stop on the weekly message, but going out and you don't have to leave your house. You can do what we're talking about here. You can be conscientious about the richness. Look at those priority relationships and say, how can I invest and acknowledge and verbalize? We have equity. Look at those integrative relationships with that function and with that collaboration and with that compatibility. How can you verbalize? How can you actualize and demonstrate, hey, you mean something here? We're going to give some of everything to everyone, but we're also going to honor the priority and higher and integrative richness in different levels of our lives. And if you have a relationship that is rich priority and integrative, give a special celebration, a special stewardship, a special intercession, a special there-ness. And sometimes the contribution and the equity is not a current equity. Sometimes people are vested in your lives, which means if they never did nothing else for you, their equity is assured. This is what I mean by mom and them, right? This is what I mean by those relationships where it's like, with my spiritual parents, if they never did another thing for me, what they have done for me, even if they never had me back in their church, what they've done for me, even if they say, I don't agree with you ideologically, it doesn't matter. What they have done for me is a debt of honor. It's a debt. It's an accrued equity there. So take stock of your relationships. Let this go to all your neighbors. The ones that say, oh, you're so great. And the ones that cuss you out, let it go out. And let that richness. That's what this church is all about. Amen. Okay. Peace, health, protection, preservation, soundness, abundance, aboveness, deliverance, prosperity, favor, and Zoe on you and yours. The ministry of angels in every way, shape, and form. In Jesus' name.